Contingent. We are live and we are going to do the yield bill. Page 491. Julia is here. We went through cleaning. Catch your breath.
Yep.
And when you do, can you put that slide you had last week that?
Do you want me to go again?
Yeah. Yes, that one up with the options. And is Bruce in there? We have a separate one from Blue.
I'm gonna send it to you all.
You did, so that's, you've got in an email. I think if we put another column in there, we will never be able to read it.
Julia Rankin, joint fiscal office. I'm just logging into my computer, running from another committee. I do have the PDF that you're referencing from Senator Hardy, so I can have both open and toggle if that's helpful.
The bill as it came to us has a yield which uses it uses the 42 million in that was in the ed fund as of December 1st. So it got figured in to the property tax rate that people were given. They voted, which was the 5% plus or minus. They voted the 5% plus or minus a decimal point. There is a further $77 million in general fund revenue. Last year, I believe it was 70. Right? That we borrowed.
Yes,
One-time money from.
last year there was a total of 69 million used to buy down property tax rates. That was the 25 million in one-time general fund transfer, the 13 million the tax rate offset reserve, and then the education fund surplus. Who also introduced, or the General Assembly also introduced the short-term rental surcharge, which was added to 100% dedicated to the education fund, as well as the repeal on cloud-based software and the sales tax, cloud tax was added.
So, and this year, there's 77 million plus 42 that will buy the tax rate down to last year's tax rate, which was close to a 14%, 13.8 on average, which means somewhere above and somewhere below. It will buy, the governor's proposal bought it down to that rate that was there last year. The House is up 1.1% from that because they included universal school meals into the cost of education, and the governor had taken it out. So we are there. We can just do that. It buys people down so that they are not going to see a huge tax increase this year. At a time where they are going through equal economic uncertainty. Or we can put aside part of that 77 million, leave it sitting on the bottom line, and I think we've got 4 or 5 scenarios as to what we would like to do. The first decision, I think, is, do we want to do anything, or do we just want to approve the yield as it has been sent to us? Senator Harvey.
You guys have all heard me say that. But I think we should be saving money for the inevitability of next year when we may be in a worse situation, or at least yeah, and in a worse situation. And won't have as much money around to help with mitigating property tax increases next year. I do want to remind everybody, and I know you all know this, but the rate that is cited in Julia's work is the average statewide rate. It's not, everybody has a slightly different
Right.
rate. And so a lot of school districts, a lot of towns are seeing tax decreases already this year because their school boards did the hard work of decreasing their budgets. And so I think that, and what I proposed or what I asked Julia to model was taking the 77 million plus the 41, adding it together, having it so it's about 59 million, using 59 million this year and saving 59 million for next year. So that we don't have a bigger cliff next year that would hurt property taxpayers. And as you all know, every time you buy down the rate, you sort of create that cliff because then you have to buy it down again next year. And so creating a smaller amount to buy down and leaving some money to give us flexibility is what I think we should do.
I think did we model, I know we talked about it, buying down or increasing the income sensitivity amount. It's been thought.
Yeah, so that was done last year. There was a one-time 13% increase to the property tax credit.
Right.
That was being applied to people's property tax bills. The reminder is, when we set the income yield, because of the property tax credit lag, setting of the income yield is going to affect property tax credit that's showing up on the year after's bills, right? So we're setting the FY 26 income yield that's going to be used to calculate the property tax credit applied on FY 27 bills. So if you were to want to do something for income, there's just a few big picture policy levers. One would be adjusting the property tax credit again one time, which would be increasing this credit, this negative revenue that we see here in the property tax credit of 153 million by some amount. That's what you did last year. This column G that I was asked to model, essentially what it does is it halves the 77 million in one-time general fund, puts half of it in a reserve, and then the other half is used to buy down the homestead rate. So, right, all folks who receive a property tax credit may pay some property tax also on their homestead property. That's another way of getting at your homestead property tax.
Okay.
So it just buys down the homestead, but leaves
Right.
the non-homestead. And what would the non-homestead?
Right,
rate-
so the way that this has been modeled, and as you all know, there's infinite ways for me to model it. But the way that this has been modeled, at request, was to take the 77 million in the general fund, put half of it into the reserve, and then the other half to lower the homestead rate and not touch the non-homestead rate. So you see that the homestead rate would be an average bill increase of 0.8%. Whereas the non-homestead rate would be an average bill increase of 5.8%. And that 5.8% corresponds with if no money were to be used to buy down rates.
But
So
that
it's the same homestead rate in both columns E and G. The difference is in the homestead and income yield.
And I think we found out last year when we looked at doing this for income sensitivity, that non-homestead doesn't, you can say this renter credit program. It also hits our affordable housing programs. They do get the renter subsidy. And I don't know how that figures because last year they told us their rent is subject to a percentage of the people's income, so they have to pay X percent of their income, but if their income doesn't go up, the downstreet housing can't raise your rent $100 to cover the increased property tax. They can only raise it if your income has gone up. I guess my question, as I'm thinking out loud here, is if the renter rebate gets included in that, in your income calculation. I have a feeling.
No, so the
that's-
renter rebate is a general fund expenditure. So that's not being captured anywhere here. You are correct that the non-homestead rate is everything that's not a homestead. So it is your apartments, second homes, businesses, deer camp.
I'll make a motion that we
Okay,
pass H
491.
491 as passed by the House.
okay. Senator Beck gets removed, that we approve H 491 as it was presented to us by the House. Need a discussion on that motion?
Should be money aside for next year. I'm happy to vote now. Demonstrated that already today.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Matters.
I'm torn. I 100% hear what you're saying about wanting to save money for the future, but I'm also thinking about the 20% increase over the past 2 years. If we had the 5.8% increase on average, wouldn't be town by town, but on average across the state. The 14% last year, the almost 6% this year. Thinking of the taxpayer in the next bill of having 20% on average across the state over the past 2 years. So I am torn because I do see the future as well, and none of us can predict it, but we can prepare for it. But we also have to think about where our taxpayers have been as well. 20% over the past 2 years is a lot to swallow, and I can't recall off the top of my head what it was prior to those years. So I'm torn. I'm gonna think about it for the next couple of minutes and we'll see what other folks have to say, but that's kind of fair.
Here's what I'd say is for everything you just said, Senator Matos is why I'm gonna vote yes. In South Burlington, I was at a meeting last night, it was Ron Hinsdale and Senator Lyons with the superintendent. The statistic was thrown out there that the average property tax bill in South Burlington was like $9,900. So that's up 20% over the last 2 years. And this 5% is another $500 on there. That's real money in people's pockets. And so I know that there might be a more prudent path where we put some of this aside. I'm just feeling from the community members now that's $2,000 in the last 2 years, and that $500, that's changing whether or not they do certain sports programs with their kids. It's a big hit to the family budget. So I support the 77 million buy down for this year because of the taxpayer impact of the last 2 years.
What's the contingency plan? That's what I keep asking. So what if we have the worst case scenario as far as spending needs for the next year? We have a degree of reserve, but is it enough if we spent $77 million this year? Is there enough of a reserve to be able to deal with this? I'm not sure. I haven't heard any testimony about a bonding capacity and what the impact of that would be if we have to go out and borrow more money because we spent all the money. That worries me.
We do still have the reserve in the
No,
fund.
the 5% is full.
Yeah.
It's full,
Yeah, I understand.
and that is there.
What's the total amount in that right now?
54.
54.9 million.
Which
Which is
is our
fully funded in
cushion,
FY 26.
which, yeah,
This construct is nice.
which if the bottom drops out and we lose Title IX and we lose everything. That's our cushion. but that's not huge cushion. And we will be in such a distraught place, this may be the least problems. I don't know if we can prepare. We just don't know. But we do know that people will be looking at, yeah, we're on top of the 14% last year and 5% this year.
And
We'll be
the pace at
looking
which
at
we are
20%.
planning remediation measures.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting at walking the door, the notion, well, we got to form a summer study committee to figure out what we're going to do next. And
You love those.
I'm concerned that the absence of pressure to do that may cause that to happen,
Mhm.
which would be, to me, the worst response, aside from raising taxes, that we can make.
I mean, we're gonna have to. Well, we are gonna have, I believe, the summer group doing districts. We could also assign them to do this, or we could ask the administration. I gather they don't like us to tell them. If everything crashes and burns, it won't just be education. It will be everything. The most likely thing we're watching them most closely right now is Medicaid. Because that's been mentioned as a target, how big a hole is made, which is one reason we're coming back here in September. Or we may come back.
And all this will help by the recession that we're going
Yes.
to have.
But this money will go out the door, and I don't think anyone intends to claw it back.
Mhm.
The last clawback was the way we got to go home before July, shut everything down, and it was the governor's
It
requirement.
was brutal
It
for
was-
schools. It was brutal.
Yeah.
You cannot do that to
Yeah.
schools.
We, since
It
this is, yeah, we can't. But we can't make promises for next year either. It's, we might be fine. And we might be well on the road to transforming our system to a more efficient one. Or we may be building from the ground up. We don't know. We could have religious charter schools. I've been heard
It's in the
Supreme Court. It's in the Supreme Court in Oklahoma. It's their Catholic group wants to do a Catholic charter school. It would be a public school run by the Catholic Church. Some people have church and state concerns about that.
Right, I'll get
Apparently,
through to you, but
we don't know what the Supreme Court's gonna do unless they've already done.
Martin, you can go first, then
All right.
I can follow. Well, I had a question, I think maybe for Chris, which is, so this $77 million transferred to the education fund in the budget that just passed on the Senate floor. If we were to reserve some of it here, which that's not the motion on the table, but if we were to, and we needed 50 million for something over that's funded in the general fund, can we transfer money back from the education fund to the general fund?
No, you are the legislature. So technically, I think you could, but as long as doing so wouldn't sort of complicate the yield calculation. I think that's the issue.
If I may,
Please.
there's also one other thing to be aware of is that not with I forget the name, the statutory reference of the poison pill,
Notwithstanding.
right? But there's that provision in Title 16 that education fund dollars can only go to education for specific purposes. So that language would need to be notwithstood.
Yeah, I mean, because
John has legal.
This was one of my reasons why I didn't think we should move the $77 million to the education fund. I thought we should keep the $77 million in reserve in the general fund with language saying that the intent was to be used if our healthcare or education system needed it. And that's why I was really not happy with the construct in the budget. And people kept reassuring me, oh, well, now it's the yield bill decision. And now we've made it. Yes, but there's this complication of moving it back to if we need to shore up our hospital system. So we've made the money less flexible. Yes, we cannot stand things, yes, for the legislature, but we've made it less flexible and it's harder to do that. And, you know, I hope I'm wrong, but I just feel like now is not the time to be, now is the time to be preparing for the possibility of bad things happening. And I mean, I guess the opposite to what Senator Chitton was saying, most of the school districts in my district have seen this year, not last year, but this year, a property tax decrease. And so I've heard at constituent meetings, you know, forums, oh, you should not be spending that money. You should be saving it just in case for next year. So that's the messaging I'm getting because my school districts cut a lot. They all did so that they were able to reduce their spending and therefore their property taxes this year. But I think they're worried about being able to do it again next year and they might need more help next year and we might not have the help to give them.
If you will notice, this committee over the last few years has killed more tax increase bills than I think we have in a decade. And part of that reason, at least on my part, is because I want to maintain some taxing capacity for situations like this. If we run into really hard times, we can follow Governor Snelling and raise some money to keep everything afloat. It's been done before. It can be done again if we have to do it.
And so temporary, right?
Yeah, I mean, he did a, 3-4 year surcharge at sunset and raised enough money to keep us from shredding the safety net, which is Medicaid, housing. The education is definitely part of the safety net. So it's not an all or nothing thing. We can respond. When we left here during COVID, we had a $50 million deficit in the fund. When we came back in September, we had a $150 million surplus. I think we probably shouldn't have spent as much of that surplus as we did.
We spread it over 3 years.
Yeah,
And a lot of that surplus was what came from the federal government.
well, yeah,
This
people
was
went out
in
and
a
bought
different
things.
position
Sales
than it is
tax
today.
It went up.
In terms of looking at money.
But
that
I
would
mean,
come.
we do have options. No one wants to do it. But if things go the way Washington is telling us it's going to go, we will be on Easy Street next year. And that company that's making PFAS free fire equipment that we were told is going into Newport will get their French equipment without tariffs and create jobs and we'll be booming. But we don't know. Right now, we've got to make the decision. I have a motion. Is there further discussion? Cindy, did you have?
No, I was just, we didn't really look at Senator Ruth Hardy's modeling.
Well, we did as much as the other day. I think,
Okay.
yeah, if we're going, right now, the motion is to approve as it was sent to us. If that motion fails, then we can discuss other options. Right, is there any further discussion on that motion? Not going to call the roll.
Okay, yeah, and I emailed.
First.
You the clerk?
Yeah.
I think we're supposed to.
This is time to finish your convey and all.
I had a text message from a brother-in-law, sorry.
That's right, you can get those things on your watches. I'm gonna have to confiscate watches in here too.
Can you set your dishwasher over?
That's right. Call roll.
All right, I'm gonna,
Unless there's more discussion.
all right, since I'm clearly out in left field, I'm just gonna do a random order this time.
Did anyone second the motion just first?
I'll second it.
Oh, so more, great.
That's,
Does, I
we
don't
need
think
a
that's
second. I've been told both ways.
Anybody third it?
Is somebody listening to something on?
Thanks, people.
Outside. Outside, it's like
Check.
weird, like very. Okay.
There's a rally at 4:30, so.
Yeah.
May-
Let's get them some.
It's also the Vermont State College's reception right now.
Okay, well, once we do this, we can all go home.
All right, I'll start. If we're ready,
Pardon?
if we're ready.
Yes, I think we're ready.
Senator Chittenden.
Yes.
Senator Meadows, yes. Senator Beck.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
No.
Senator Brock.
Yes, with black cloud for an explanation.
I can't draw that. Senator Euling.
I second what Senator Brock said. Yes, with reluctance.
Yeah. Senator Cummings.
Yes, with lightning coming out of that. But I'm not hopeless.
You guys realize that all what you just said is meaningless when you vote.
No,
There's no vote with a black cloud.
I can't.
Reported that way before.
Okay. I'll report it. Unless somebody else wants to volunteer. Yeah,
We don't.
oh, you want to report it? Fine.
Sections, I think I can.
He's done it the past
I do.
4 years.
Oh, you do it every year?
I
Okay.
have, I can report it if you don't want.
We usually just stick it in miscellaneous.
You want it?
I'll take it, sure.
Okay, you can do it. Thank you, everyone. I know that was a hard vote. It is the first with many. We can all go into the reception, the rally. I get the drum roll starting.